I want to be back in Washington, D.C. doing the work that the people elected me to do.
Should Speaker Johnson call you back right away?
No, because this is the sort, and we've talked about this with the Speaker and leadership over and over again, is that we did our job on September 19th. To call us back to have debates when the Democrats are not willing to open the government up is of no value. The other thing is when Democrats are throwing a temper tantrum is to reward them somehow by opening up and let's do business as usual. The government is shut down. That is only rewarding ineffective and inappropriate behavior. So when it comes to that, I know that there are some, even in the Republican conference, that say, well, let's just open up and do things. Well, our workers are not being paid. My staff is not being paid right now. We have people in the military not being paid, security individuals. We have air traffic controllers who are not being paid. We have flights that are being canceled and delays as well. And we're supposed to go back to Washington, business as usual, flying around, doing our usual things. I don't think that that's a healthy way to go about things. So I'm working in the district. Well, they've given me this opportunity and privilege of doing that, but we should open the government up to have these debates and policy discussions in regular order like we have always done.
You could get into a circular argument with so much of this, but if you agree that you need to talk about the enhanced benefits, why not go back and talk? Why not talk with them? You mentioned your ideas for why not, that you don't want to be held up by the government shutdown. But at the same time, you understand if you're making a deal with someone, you don't give up leverage. And the line that from Speaker Johnson, or even what you've expressed, is give up the leverage, and then we'll talk about what you want.
We have essential government workers that are able to work, but many of our committee staff, you would be advocating for them to come into work and not be paid for the work that they do. And then the question is, should Washington, D.C. be a voluntary organization? Should we make all of us just amateur, not professional, but we're just going to show up, no pay, and we just send people there to do work without any sort of formality associated with it? Many of the people that we need to help us in committees actually are professional employees right now that are not going to draw a paycheck associated with doing that. So the idea that we can go back and pretend that this is normal and acceptable while we are not funding these individuals almost is like, well, as a member of the Boy Scouts of America, I'm an Eagle Scout. It's a volunteer organization. Do we want to turn Washington, D.C. into a volunteer organization where people just show up out of the goodness of their heart to do things? That's not been that way for the entire time that I'm aware of with Congress. And I think it's beyond the pale to ask people to show up to work when we're not going to pay them. When, in fact, September 19th, we sent a check to the Senate Democrats to sign and fund the government. So Chuck Schumer and the Schumer shutdown is driving this whole thing. 5 Democrats is all we need. And if they'd be willing to do that, we can open the government tomorrow. But so far, they've been unwilling to do it.
Have you talked with any Democrats? Have you talked to any Democrats since the shutdown?
No, I haven't talked to any Democrats because there's nothing for me to talk with them about. I'm visiting with my constituents while I'm in the district. Nobody's reached out to me. I've not reached out to anybody specific. And that's another interesting thing about the enhanced premium tax credit debate is hospitals reached out to me for over a year. Insurance companies have reached out to me. But none of my Democrat colleagues have reached out to me until after the shutdown. And I've asked,
out to them?
For what purpose? Who's the linchpin of that discussion that I should reach out to? I don't know either. In fact, Chuck Schumer, if I called him, I'm sure he would not answer the phone to talk to a humble freshman from the representative class.
You'd probably be the only call.
Although, as a doctor, I would be happy to talk to him. If he's got such a beef with this, my question is, why did he wait until after the shutdown to bring up this policy as an essential issue for them? And I've asked my constituents, when did you hear about enhanced premium tax credits? Did you hear about it before the shutdown or after the shutdown? And I've not talked to one person that has heard about this until after the shutdown. So then the question is this shutdown just a ploy to draw attention to a particular policy? And if it is, and if we just open the government back up and we all just go back to work like usual, we're going to have a shutdown every month. Every time everybody's got a pet project that they want to have funded, we'll just shut down the government. So we're going to force a debate about what I want to talk about. That is totally inappropriate for us to drive policy using the American people and its institutions as a leverage point to try to force a policy decision. And I'm not going to stand for that. I have 8 children. I know what temper tantrums look like. And these are important issues, far more than just a child throwing a temper tantrum. But I'm not going to reward positive behavior, trying to act like everything's normal when This shutdown is a nuclear option, and it's not something that should be used against the American people.
But a lot of your constituents have 8 children, and they're going to lose their health insurance.
They are not going to lose their health insurance. The Wall Street Journal published an article last week that suggested 93% of the people that receive these enhanced premium tax credits are going to receive them just like usual, and their premiums are not going to be more than $50 a month, in spite of what anecdotal evidence is brought by the media. There are going to be some.
I've been looking at
Look at the
numbers.
have you read the Wall Street Journal article
No,
from
I've
last
looked
week?
at the actual numbers from the government. It's very clear
Very clear what?
that the premiums are more than doubling.
For how many people?
I've got the numbers right
So
here.
the Wall Street Journal,
This
that's
is
the
from
article that I've
KFF Health.
send those. I'd love to look at those numbers.
Okay.
Tell me
But,
about them.
Yeah, from KFF Health, a family of 4 making $55,000 a year would have paid $462 last year or this year for their insurance, and they would be paying $2,404
And
this year.
I am committed to working on that in regular order. In fact, it's been.
But that is a lot of money. That's a lot more
Oh
money.
yeah, absolutely. And I've heard from my constituents about that as well. And part of what I've advocated on a policy level, and I appreciate the question and the discussion, is we should have glide paths for these kind of programs. And in fact, the Democrats, going back to 2021 when they set this up, they're the ones that set the deadline for the end of this year. And that might seem like it's really impending. In Congress, that's an eternity for us to have these discussions. It seems like Congress, with as ADD as it seems like Congress is, they don't deal with anything until it's an absolute emergency. And to me, this is an essential issue for us to work through. And I'm committed, understanding how important these premium increases are to people, I'm committed to working those out. Not to negate the issue, but as we debate and discuss that issue, if you would like to tell me why 5 Democrats aren't willing to open up on the Senate side, the government, and then we can have these discussions, why is it that somehow Trump and Schumer and Speaker Johnson are supposed to go into a back room and sort these things out without regular order, without policy discussions and debates, without the people being able to see it transparently? That doesn't sound functional to me.
What kind of glide path would you support? There are 10 House Republicans who have signed on to a year extension. What kind of glide path for ending?
We know, and that is an important question as well. We know that there's waste, fraud, and abuse, and that program as well as many others, and we need to reform the program. If I've heard stories of $600,000 a year, people are still getting premium benefits associated with this. Families that are making $600,000 a year. So that family that you're describing, a 400% increase in their premiums, that's something that we need to work on, making less than $60,000, $70,000 a year. Absolutely, those people should have help associated with that, but we need to find how the program is working and where we need to make these refinements. Once again, how do you do that in a smoke-filled back room in Washington, D.C. without transparency, committee debate, people being able to talk, Democrats and Republicans being able to talk with one another about what's going to work? But even with solar and wind tax benefits that were coming and dropping them off a cliff, I wasn't supportive of that. Anybody wondering about that? We wrote a letter to suggest this is not healthy policy. When we make promises, we should keep those promises, and if there's ways for us to glide these things down, we should try to do that.
Do Republicans hold any blame for the shutdown? Because I know Jim Jordan and others in the past have said if a party controls a trifecta of government, the shutdown is on them. Is that the case here?
I don't know why Jim Jordan would say such a thing. I have a great respect for him. He understands we need 60 votes in the Senate, and unless they change that rule, which I think that's worthy of discussion as well, this idea that somehow 60 is better than 59, is better than 55, is better than 65, where did that number come from? I don't know if it's in the 10 Commandments, is like number 11, it says you must have 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate, because it seems like none of our bills that we send from the House over to the Senate, actually, most of them don't seem to get through the Senate because it's hard to get those 60 votes. So if Jim Jordan said that, I don't understand why he'd say that. We know President Trump, the House and the Senate, Republicans control, but you need 60 votes, as you know well and the rest of us in this room know well. And we only have 53 Republicans. In fact, Rand Paul won't vote for this. We have 52 Republicans that will vote for this. So we need 8 senators on the Democrat side that are willing to come along with. And I just think it's sensible. We should not keep the American people with their services. I mean, we're talking about SNAP just yesterday. Over the weekend, it's expiring.
Today with the partial funding that the Trump administration
with the $5 billion, I absolutely. So I was asked that question last week, and I didn't know there was a $5 billion pot of gold sitting around that it's like, we're $38 trillion in debt. I didn't know we had $5 billion sitting around here in the state capitol. That means something. In Washington, D.C., that's couch cushion change. It's ridiculous how much money we spend over there. But they're very supportive with these judges, especially reportedly, too, have ruled that we can use that $5 billion contingency fund to help feed hungry people. Totally supportive of that. But it's temporary, and that money is going to compete for SNAP, women, infant, and children programs, as well as school lunch programs. How long is that going to be able to function? Not for very long. And the question is, why don't my Democrat colleagues just fund the government so that we can, which I already voted in support of back on September 19th.
Does that money get us any closer to a long-term solution, or is it just a temporary stopgap?
Seems like if I'm in the doctor's office and I've got a gaping wound and I need to put stitches in as a real fix to this, it seems like that money would be just a few bandages trying to kind of hold it together while we get some things organized and then put the stitches in. So I don't think it's a healthy approach, because really last Thursday was when the senators were in session, and they could have voted, the Democrats could have voted last Thursday to fund the government. We wouldn't have faced this SNAP dilemma that we're confronting today.
We know the USDA's plan, original contingency plan, said that that money would be used, and then it was reversed, and now we're seeing that money again. I've talked to a lot of SNAP recipients who feel like food is being used as a weapon in this shutdown. What's your response to people here in Utah who feel like they're caught in the middle?
It's shameful that these Senate Democrats, with Chuck Schumer leading them, would feel like it's appropriate to withhold food from people as a leverage point for a policy debate. And I'll just leave it at that.
Congressman, you mentioned the national debt, and during the last election cycle, you talked about how that was a priority for you, and according to poll results, it is for lots of Utah voters as well. And sometimes that's lost in these shutdown debates about what is really a small piece of the pie when it comes to discretionary spending. So interest payments are now $1 trillion a year. We're seeing this run out of control. So I'm wondering, what are you doing to make this a priority, and is Republican leadership in Washington, D.C. willing to make those hard policy or decisions about, cutting spending in some of these welfare programs that are mandatory and or raising taxes?
Thank you, Brigham, for that question. The regular order budget process is something I am deeply committed to, and I know Speaker Johnson and the House Republicans are committed to that as well. There may be others committed that I'm not aware of, but we have already passed out of the budget committee 12 out of 12 of the appropriations bills, and 3 of those have passed off the House floor. And
the welfare programs driving debt you don't vote on, right?
If you're talking, you talking Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid?
Social Security. You talked last election cycle about these things driving the debt. I'm wondering whether there's a political will to address these actual kind
Medicaid
of
was addressed in the big beautiful bill, and I'm proud of that fact. In fact, I have evidence there's 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid right now. So we're working on that entitlement reform, which is a big part of the national debt. The other things right now, we need to open the government to have these discussions, but regular order budget is what I'm focused on. We need to do regular order budgets, and what that means is that we have debate and discussion, and they all have to start in the House. That's something that many people may or may not know, is we start them in the House, we send them over. So we've passed a quarter out of the House over to the Senate, and there's a conference committee that's been voted. So we're working on regular order budgets, which is one of the ways for us to actually get our deficit under some semblance of control. I remember, and I think many in this room and many listening to this and maybe reading this, is back in the day, it's not that long ago, well, 30 years ago, that we didn't have a deficit. We had a surplus. That was during President Clinton's time. I'm proud of that fact, and it makes me hope that our 30-year mortgage, maybe we can pay it off at some point, but COVID blowout spending has been terrible for us. So a sensible approach to how do we spend money, and through the budget process, House and Senate working together, that was one of the reasons why we did this continuing resolution back in March, and then we asked for this one back on September 19th, was so that we'd have time to actually work on these regular order budgets. And at this point, I'm privileged to work in the district, but we should have been working on regular order budgets for these past 4 weeks that we've been shut down.
The other thing you don't get to do is oversight when you're here in the
True.
district. And there's some big things happening. The military action in the Caribbean
Great
and
point.
the Pacific, and now there's a threat to Nigeria that came out. and who knows where that might
Those
go.
are important points, and some of my national security expert friends are telling me that there are other things that are not even openly publicly discussed that are put in jeopardy by not paying government workers, not allowing people to come in and do the work that they normally would do. And we may have international adversaries that are continuing to march forward while we shut down, putting us in security jeopardy, let alone the air traffic controllers who are working as a volunteer firefighter organization to come in without pay. One of the things that we've done, and this is only a token, we went to the air traffic controllers this morning and delivered them some delicious crumble cookie, which this is not a promotional, but I love crumble cookies. They're amazingly delicious, but not good for your health. So it's just, if you're trying to work on being healthy, don't go there. But you can go there occasionally and still be healthy if you want. But we delivered crumble cookies to these people, telling them thank you from their congressman just for the showing up to work and being willing to do that without a promise of pay. So I am very concerned about the safety and security of this, which is one of the reasons why I've, along with Dusty Johnson on the House side and Ron Johnson on the Senate side, the No Shutdowns Act is something that's very sensible. Is we should pass that so that if there is the threat of a irreconcilable budget issue, that we get an automatic 2-week funding of the government, and then if we fail to get a budget in that 2 weeks, there will be another automatic 2 weeks, and we can continue to work that process forward until we get a budget resolution. So I'm totally supportive of that. I think this weapon that's being used by the Democrats right now, it is not a weapon that the American people should support. I certainly don't support it.
You talked at a presser a few weeks ago earlier on in the shutdown about the idea of proposing a bill that would ban government shutdowns. Is that something?
That's what that bill is.
And have you actually introduced it?
It's actually been introduced by Dusty Johnson and Ron Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
and I've co-sponsored it. Absolutely, yeah, totally supportive of that. And then no work, no pay. As Congress people, they should not be paid. If they're not going to go to work, shut down, furlough government workers, furlough the pay for the Congress people as well. And that's one. Senator Senator Curtis and myself now as the representative. He's proposed that before. It's not gone anywhere. I'm proposing it now. I just think if we're going to put hurt on other people, we should suffer the hurt ourselves.
What are you doing with your salary right now?
It's been off to the side. I've voluntarily said I'm not going to take a paycheck until my government employee colleagues and constituents are going to be paid.
Do you know of other lawmakers who are doing the same?
Yeah.
Should the Senate get rid of the filibuster?
As I said before, the 60-vote threshold is really interesting, and it seems to be a real struggle for us. Why not 55? Why not 53? What about 58? What about another number? What about carve-outs for budgets? If you can pass it with 55, why not? But other debates, you need 60. What about other debates? Put it up to 75. I mean, these numbers, to me, I see numerous possibilities with that. Somehow the sanctimonious number 60 that God gave to the Senate at some point in the past, I don't know who decided that. What's the objective evidence that suggests that it's working? I know I've had some very trusted colleagues tell me that it's been a big win for the minority party to stop terrible legislation from passing. I respect that. I'm not a senator, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but this idea that we're going to hold the American people and its government hostage because of a 60-vote threshold, why not have a budget threshold of 52 or 3 or 5? Force some bipartisanship, but not shut the government down. I think we should reduce the likelihood for government shutdowns. Whatever we can do, we should have those policy debates.
Do you think that could come back to haunt you? Should you find yourself in the minority sometime in the future?
Well, I'm in the House right now, so are you suggesting that I'll be demoted to the Senate at some point? I don't know.
You're speaking on the Senate rules, so.
Yeah, it's because right now it's pretty frustrating for us to see the government shut down, and the American people should be disgusted, frankly, that 5 Senate Democrats can't come on board with a clean continuing resolution. We didn't put anything in that government funding request demand that was anything that should be objectionable besides just fund the government for another period of time.
As of today, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, absolutely. We know you can only hold your breath for so long. This is a breath-holding contest. Frankly, it's childish and worse than childish. And I believe these debates about the enhanced premium tax credit issues, they are solvable. I've got a bundle of ideas myself that I would be happy to contribute to anybody willing to listen. But with the government shutdown, it's hard to do those things. But at some point, we're hearing word on the street that maybe after the election tomorrow, which today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday, we have some governors in the nation that are going to be elected, and also we know the New York City mayor is going to be elected as well tomorrow, that maybe after that there will be some movement on this issue. But the Republicans have failed to keep the government shut down in the past forever, which is appropriate. The government needs to work. And in this case, the Democrats will fail as well. The government will reopen. And my expectation, I said naively maybe 4 weeks ago, I think it'll be 3 to 5 days, 7 days. I expected better of my Democrat colleagues. I just expected sensible approach to this, that shutting down the government is not worthy of policy manipulation and holding people hostage that way. But I'm really disappointed. We've seen the Senate Democrats hold firm for whatever reason on this demand that they're going to shut the government down for this policy debate. But maybe next week we'll get back to work as we should. But in the meantime, I don't think congressmen should be paid, and that's why I've opened the no work, no pay bill.
As a doctor yourself, are you concerned about the broader health implications if health insurance becomes less affordable?
I absolutely am concerned about that, yes. And I think Obamacare has been a failure on many, many levels. And back when President Obama and Nancy Pelosi, you have to vote for it so you can know what's in it, back in 2010, it was one of the reasons why I got involved in politics, because I am tired of politicians dictating and mandating on a great healthcare professional system what should be done. So yeah, I've always been concerned about that. Access to healthcare is a big deal. And that's one of the reasons why I volunteer my time at the Provo Voluntary Care Clinic. I've over many years, now that I'm a congressman, I can't do that anymore, but for many years I've gone to donate my time to people that didn't have insurance. There should be access to people so they can have access to health care, just like there should be access to food. So yeah, I'm very supportive of healthcare reform that improves the finances so people can have insurance.
Where is the GOP at with developing an alternative
To what?
to Obamacare?
I think Obamacare is here to stay. It's, we're 15 years into this experiment, but there's many ways for us to work on the healthcare system. It's a Byzantine, very complicated system that needs a lot of reform to drive it in the right direction. My father recently, on a personal level, I broke my ankle when I was a senior in high school. It's 1987, and to get a broken ankle taken care of in 1987 was $30. He found a bill that the doctor, I got a photocopy of this bill, and for me to get a cast and treat my broken ankle was $30. And I bill for those now. It's $1,500 to $2,000 to treat that same kind of broken ankle nowadays. What happened in the past 40 years? I know I feel like a mummy sometimes. I'm so old, but the reality is there's something really wrong with the system that in the past 40 years has turned into such an expensive, prohibitive system as to cost. And we need to work on that.
What specifically would you support as far as reforms go legislatively?
You don't have the time. Seriously, you don't have enough time. No, you don't. We need to reform PBM. PBMs need to be reformed. We need to work on health insurance. Hospitals and how they bill, off-site and on-site, needs to be reformed. But doctors always are getting demoted as to their pay. That's one thing. Doctors and nurses and physician assistants and nurse practitioners, they should be paid well to do this really important work that they do at 3 o'clock in the morning in the emergency department when you're going in to see them. So there are so many areas for us to work on, but it's in the political realm, it's what can be done that I'm looking for. And I've got ideas and options, but I can't reveal all of those at this point because I need to find people that are motivated and willing to work on those things.
Do you think that PBM reform has a chance in this Congress? It fell apart last time.
I'm an optimistic guy, which is why I ran for Congress. There's always a chance for various things. It's really interesting to watch leadership along with the people like me, the motivated freshmen who are naive but interested in trying to make a difference. Absolutely. America is the greatest country in the history of the world, and I believe we can make a difference, but many times it's going to be less dramatic, more basic as to what sort of reforms, but significantly motivated to improve our healthcare system.
So one final
Last
question on
question.
national debt. You were very optimistic a year ago as well about Congress's ability to kind of reform these programs that are the vast majority of government spending, like I said, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm wondering, in your time in Washington, D.C., as you talk with your colleagues, we've heard some of the Republican leadership say we're not going to touch Social Security or Medicaid. That for a time, that was almost like a campaign slogan. Do you sense that there is a desire to make these changes just so that our kids and grandkids aren't going to have a country with higher interest rates or inflation and these?
Definitely interest. It's a matter of what's possible and how do we do it in a way that works for the American people. So I'll just point to myself as a 56-year-old fellow who could feasibly go on Medicare in 9 years as a 65-year-old is even at my age, and many of you look really healthy here today, but I'm trying to maintain my health so that I don't really need access to a lot of health care right now. But there are people not with their own choices. They need lots of access to health care. I'm not talking about those people. There are many of us that we could access Medicare 67 years old. That'd save a bundle of money and would not damage most people. In fact, my 20-year-old child, why don't we reform the programs like Social Security and Medicare for those children and give them an opportunity to make adjustments as a young person and not have as much dependency on those programs long term. These ideas are floating around. It's not a lack of ideas, it's just a lack of political will to move on these things because nobody seems to care about what is now a $38 trillion debt.
Is it because voters don't care?
I think we can see that with some voters in that they live kind of paycheck to paycheck for a long time. I mean, my house is paid off because I've worked hard along with my wife and 8 children to pay off our house. We did that as fast as possible. Many people are still in their early 60s trying to pay off a house, which is it's hard for a lot of people out there. So I'm motivated to making our debt move in the right direction, but it's not going to happen tomorrow or next year. But we can make our national debt better, and we're working together to try to find the political will to make these things better. Thanks for joining me today, and Emma, thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. If
Thanks
you have
for
any follow-up
Yeah, it's a
questions,
pleasure.
reach out.
How do I disconnect from all of these? Thank you, sir.
Oh, they're permanent.
Yeah, exactly. I got to walk around all day mic'd up.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tom.
sir. Thanks, appreciate it.